So guys, as we all know, every copy of Mario 64 is personalized, so I'm curious, what were your guys' copies like?
Mine had the Wario apparition. He kept on belittling every single move I made.
I had Luigi for some fucking reason. I
I
don't
ran
know.
Ella's
64
real.
times around around the Star Tower.
Oh yeah, well my version had the Bowsette apparition. Yeah, take that. God, remember when Bowsette was a thing?
The
That was
internet
like,
loved that.
yeah,
Nin-
really love that.
Nintendo was like, "Hey guys, look at this funny crown that turns you into a princess. Ain't that wacky?"
Internet loved that. Nintendo hated it once they learned what people were
As soon
doing
as
with
it
it.
dropped, it was stolen to the dark side.
Man, if only Alpha Dream had made a sequel to Bowser's Inside Story starring Bowsette, they'd still be with us today. Anyway. That's right, everybody. We are back once again talking about Super Mario 64. And your eyes do not deceive you, dear listener, because we are joined once again by the ever iconic himbo, Justin.
Yay!
Welcome
Well,
back, Justin.
it's good to be back.
What have you been up to, man?
Just kind of chilling for the most part. Not a whole lot of stuff to talk about here.
Well, that's pretty good.
Playing games, getting stuff done. Recently beat Fire Emblem Engaged, not Awakening.
I've been playing through that currently. I'm just about wrapping it up. How do you feel about it as a lifelong Fire Emblem fan?
It's a good game, but there are some issues here and there I have with it that are just kind of weird.
Yeah, the writing is definitely not the best, but I do like the
Yeah.
gameplay.
And not to mention the DLC just does not mesh well with the actual balance of the game.
Right. But that's neither here nor there. We are here to discuss Mario.
Mario.
And it's pretty appropriate that we're talking about it on today of all days, because tell me, guys, what's today's date?
Today is March 10th.
AKA Mario Day.
That is a
Yeah.
thing. I did not know that.
Since
Well,
MAR is like shortened for March, and then 10 like IO, Mario.
oh, okay.
Totally planned, and it wasn't just a coincidence that this is how all our schedules lined up this week.
I mean, definitely not. I definitely was not asked what day works better.
So, Mario 64. One of the most iconic and influential games of all time, I would say. I feel like if there was a college course on the history of video games, Mario 64 would be the main point of discussion when talking about the transition from 2D to 3D in the mid 90s.
Yeah, and also it kind of pioneered the analog stick because since it was a 3D model, we needed 360 degrees of movement. Really, just a staple in everything. PlayStation, Switch, Xbox Series, everything. Everything has an analog stick now because of the N64.
Yeah, I mean, also Super Mario 64 was one of the games that helped revolutionize a lot of platforming in general.
While it wasn't the first 3D game, 3D graphics had been around for a few years in the lead up to this game. Mario 64 was just a huge leap forward for the industry. It was the largest scale game of 3D at that time, and it was a pretty solid step forward for the most part. It cleared the bar really well, I would say. So, I want to know, what are your guys' histories with this game? I actually played the DS version as a kid years
Oh
ago.
no.
I
Yeah.
originally played it on the DSi when I first got it. It was one of my first games for that as well.
Oh
Right.
wow.
I
Like I hear those versions were the worst.
But you could play as Yoshi and Luigi.
And
There was a little
Wario.
multiplayer mini game with the
Right.
slides.
I don't think I ever actually finished the DS version. I just used it as essentially a sandbox game as a kid where I would just run around and not really care about collecting power stars. But once I got into high school, the unofficial gaming club that I've mentioned in previous episodes I was a part of, which was just me and a few buddies digging up our old consoles and just playing them off hours whenever we could, assuming the faculty of the school let us just hang around for an hour or so. And Mario 64 was definitely a staple of those games. My friend would bring his N64, and I remember it being Mario Kart, Ocarina of Time, and Mario 64. Those were the three games on the N64 we would always play. I just remember, even back then, we'll get into this later, but there was just something so mesmerizing about Mario 64. Like, even at the time, I felt it gave off a really weird vibe compared to other
Mhm.
games of the time.
You kind of have to look beneath the surface a little bit, kind of like stick your toes deep in the water and on the deep end of the pool. Like the music, and as well as like the backgrounds to some things, as well as some of the voices that you can hear in during the game, kind of otherworldly to me.
I mean, that'd explain why there's creepy pastas of it.
But what about you, Justin? What's your history with this game?
There's not a whole lot there outside of just It was a huge part of my childhood playing it on the DSi because that's the only access I had to the game really at the time. Though versus replaying it and playing originally, I do not miss having used my stylus for certain things.
I will say, in the late 2000s, early 2010s, there was, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there was a ton of N64 nostalgia around that time as well. To a lesser extent, PS1. I just feel like at that time, that was when people who had grown up on the N64 PS1 generation, they were now getting into their 20s and they were starting to get nostalgic for it because not just video games, but a lot of I just remember the early 2010s having a lot of 90s nostalgia on the internet in general. Like, there was a lot of memes about Animaniacs, Disney afternoon cartoons from the time. Yeah, there was just a lot of 90s nostalgia, and as a result, I just remember seeing Mario 64 being hyped up as the greatest platformer game ever made on a lot of forums back in the day, and it just kind of built up this level of reverence for it in my head. And I think it's a reverence, a legacy at the very least, that carries on today, because this is one of the most influential games of all time, I would argue.
I would definitely say so in the speedrunning community for sure, because
Yeah.
that's how I was introduced to this game. Seeing all these crazy jumps and speed walking and teleporting through walls and all that craziness. And people have done blinded speed runs. They've done, oh yeah, randomizers. It's just insane how these people are so attuned to this game, how many times they kept practicing. And it just goes to show that this game is very nostalgic. It also still has that challenge that is in today's history of video games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and years later, more recently, it also kickstarted another trend, the whole iceberg thing on YouTube. Like, that started with the Mario 64 iceberg you mentioned earlier.
Quite a lot to unpack there, but I'm sure we'll get to it later.
Nostalgia is a really good word to use to describe this game. When you think of nostalgic video games, obviously everyone's going to have their own personal version, but like I was somewhat talking about earlier, Mario 64 just encapsulates that sense of childhood nostalgia for early video games that you play at a young age. Even if you didn't grow up with Mario 64, like I kind of did, the original version at least, it still incorporates a lot of that sense of missing home or missing your childhood innocence and imagination. And I
I
think it
think
captures that sense really well.
I think the reason why that is because Mario is a staple in a lot of gamers' history, especially when they started out as a kid. Like, for example, my first time was Super Mario Galaxy on the Wii. People play those Mario games, and then just seeing Mario again in a 3D platform, that's why we still feel that nostalgia for him. And that's how we can connect with different generations of gamers.
All right, well, with all that preamble out of the way, let's get down to business. Super Mario 64, released on June 23rd, 1996 in Japan for the Nintendo 64. Developed and published by Nintendo, directed by the ever prolific Shigeru Miyamoto. The music was composed by longtime Nintendo composer Koji Kondo, another great Nintendo member that has just as a storied history as Miyamoto does, in my opinion. He's done the music for so many Mario games and Zelda games as well.
They're very iconic scores as well. I mean, every time I just want to hear that ha ha every time.
Oh,
It
yeah.
just hits me nostalgia feels for me.
We talk about music in a lot of games, and this is just one of those that, while it does reiterate on some previous Mario games, like the title theme and all that, it still introduces a lot of great scores and soundtrack to everything. The main title theme just has this great zoning out kind of music of, oh yeah, we're just gonna relax but get ready for an epic adventure type of vibe. The main theme of Peach's Castle that plays when you're just wandering around the hub world, that it has that nice classical little Renaissance kind of tinge to it that just adds to the fairy tale aesthetic of it all. The Piranha Plant's lullaby, it's just so peaceful and sweet, and yeah, I really like the
Oh,
Piranha Plant lullaby song.
It does bring
I
a nice sense of calm.
I love the music that plays with what's the sand world called? It's like sand
Shifting
dune world.
Sandlands.
Shifting Sandland. Okay, yeah. So that music, man, I don't know. I just love that. I just love that atmosphere that it gives, and it really fits that picture that you see when you drop in. You see the pyramid off in the back.
It's a bit of a cliche, but I think probably my favorite song to a level has to be the Dire Dire Docks theme. It's just so eerie, but in a good way. It's like you're a kid and you're in a new place for the first time. You're a little overwhelmed, but you're enthusiastic. You're eager to go exploring.
And that's the big thing about this game, exploring. There's so much hidden in every single course of this level. Sorry, the course of this game. There's a power star that could have been hidden from you that you weren't meant to get, but somehow you just got it just by accident, or maybe you took an alternate route from the original one. And really, the game rewards you for that. And I
Right.
really love it.
Miyamoto's main drive for making this game was he wanted to reward players with exploration. Because this was Nintendo's first major 3D game, his thought process was, well, players can go in any direction and move in ways they couldn't before, so let's give them incentives to do that.
For example, the red coins, if you collected all 8 red coins in each course, a star would appear.
Oh god, some of those red coins were a bit of a hassle to get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also like on top of exploring outside the red coins, but I remember on the first level there's that chain chomp that you have to set free by
Oh, that
stomping
Yep,
on
yep,
that
yep, yep.
post. I don't think the game gives you any kind of indication of hint that you can do that.
The only thing is just the cage with a star behind it, and that's it. That's also sort of overcoming a fear.
Oh yeah, I
Well,
mean it
yeah,
would.
it's a scary bowling ball with a mouth. It's gonna eat ya. No, no, no.
Yeah, not to mention if you don't know exactly how to avoid its movements, it will hit you extremely easily.
I
Mhm.
always wondered as a kid, why do they bark like dogs? Like, I know that's just meant to be a quirky little thing of the Mario universe, but I just remember playing another Mario game and the chain chomps. I just was like, why are they dogs?
I don't know, maybe to kind of like because a bit like a runaway dog on a chain or something like that.
That was too abstract of a concept for a 5-year-old Chase to comprehend. I just thought, that's not a dog, that's a bowling ball.
I don't know. As a child, I just kind of rolled with it. I'm like, that's cool.
Real quick before we move on from music, though, Bowser's theme, he's got that
Oh,
nice,
yeah.
like, 90s little bop kind of going on. It's got this badass 90s vibe to it.
Yeah, every time that I went against Bowser, I had to sort of run around a little bit because I wanted to listen to the music
So
longer.
long, gay Bowser.
So long.
Although in the
Oh,
Switch version, which I think is also the Japanese version, he just says bye-bye.
I don't know. Was it like something with the recording or something? Did like get corrupted?
Well, I think
Or
it's because in Japanese, he's not called Bowser, he's called King Koopa, so calling him Bowser wouldn't make sense. So in the English version, they just changed the line.
that worked.
Did they seriously just change it to gay Bowser?
Happened to
I
sound
always
like
heard it as
Bowser.
like so long, a Bowser, because Mario has the little A kind of thing. So it's like so long, a Bowser.
I remember more of like a Bowser because like it's
Mm.
me, a Mario, instead of a Mario.
Speaking of voice acting, this was the first main game to feature Charles Martinet as Mario, the iconic voice
Mhm.
himself. He had voiced Mario a couple times before Mario 64, but they were just relatively minor appearances. I think he showed up in Mario Teaches Typing, which was another game that Mario talked in. He also voiced Mario in a couple showcases, events in the advertising campaign of this game. So, as far as most people are concerned, this was the first time Mario was fully voiced. And yeah, it's been the voice you think of when you hear Mario, except nowadays when you think of Chris Pratt.
Wahoo.
It's me, Mario.
Let's
But
go. I just love stomping Goombas.
you're hired.
Yay! I have job now.
Okay, so let's talk about the iconic sounds that he would make, such as like when Mario falls off a tall
Oh
ledge.
God, I think I speak for a lot of I think I speak for a lot of people when I say Mario's screams of pain and terror are just burned into your memory, like when you land
Mhm.
on lava or catch on fire. Ow, 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 ow.
I'm gonna be honest, those noises brought me small bits of joy growing up.
Yes, I love hearing video game characters in pain.
Woohoo!
I just enjoyed how they made the sound. I found it funny.
God, I swear, you really wanted to avoid any fire-based obstacles in this game because if Mario catches on fire, you lose all control. And on
Yeah.
Lethal Lava Land, if you fall in the lava, you might as well just give up and die right there because you're tossing a coin if Mario's gonna survive that or not.
Especially in the last Bowser level, when you jump onto the one where it has like a fire tower shooting fires, as soon as you climb up, guess what? Now you are on fire, and Mario's running running around, you lost 2 of your 8 health, and now you gotta try to make this jump, and you keep missing. Well, guess what? Just, do the speed run strat and jump and skip that entire section.
This game does at the very least confirm that the Mushroom Kingdom has a capitalistic based healthcare system because you have to pick up coins in order to heal, so
Yay!
privatized healthcare. Hey everyone, Future Chase here. Just wanted to mention that at this point, Justin started experiencing some mic problems and unfortunately had to stop recording, so that's why it's just going to be Garrett and I for the rest of this episode.
We were talking about, the capitalists.
On that subject, much like how BioShock establishes its deconstruction of a libertarian utopia by introducing Rapture in a state of complete anarchy, so too does Mario 64 convey its anti-monarchy themes by depicting the Toads as completely useless and paralyzed with fear the moment their divine ruler is taken hostage.
Pretty much. All they do is just pretty much cower and hide in the walls.
A Koopa chooses, a Toad obeys.
Okay, can we talk about that real quick? Because like I feel like all the courses, which are paintings, by the way, that you jump into in this world.
I just love that as a concept. It just really adds to the fever dream, whimsical nature. Like, let's just jump into paintings that ripple like water.
Okay, so like we don't like this one world. It's called Wet Dry World, but apparently if you jump in different parts of the painting, the water level will be different in the game.
Yeah, it's a
And
cool idea that not everyone picks up on, but once you figure it out, it helps a lot with that level.
and also there is a clock that you could jump into too.
Tick tock clock.
If it's like on the 12, I believe everything's still. 3, everything is slow. 6, everything is medium, and 9, everything is super fast or sporadic. I can't remember. Even though you're not in the course, you can still discover things. There's even like secret slides, which I love that music. Like it goes. "Din, din, din, din,
Yeah,
din, din,
it's
din."
like Turkey in the Dell or something like that. It's like this old hay bale, darn tootin' kind of theme to it.
Mhm.
Just a fun little thing. The little whistle effect that plays during that song, it's cool. We might as well talk about the development of this game, and really, I think the story of Mario 64's development is a story of working within the limitations of the time.
I like how creative they got with its development, especially since it was developed alongside a console.
It's part of the reason the N64's release was delayed by a few months because Mario 64's development was taking a bit longer. Really, for the first several months of development, the developers were mostly focused on perfecting Mario's movements and abilities. They didn't start working on anything else until Mario moved in a way that they deemed satisfying, and I think that's a really good idea to approach game design because that's what the player is going to be spending most of their time with. I think they just created like a flat grid or like an empty square room and just put
Mhm.
Mario in it and they went nuts with his movement. So they were having a fun, if frustrating, time in the early days.
The first model they made was the bunny you find in the what's his name? Mips. Yeah, so Mips,
Yeah.
that was the one they practiced their 3D animations on. I will say that the obstacles too, while they can be pretty tedious, it does require you to think outside the box. Like
Yeah.
if you crouch on the ground and then you jump, you are able to jump higher and do a backflip. Some areas you do need that. Other areas you need a wall jump.
The backwards long jump,
Yeah, the backwards long jump. Oh lord,
the
especially
infinite
on
staircase.
you go up so fast. It is so fun when you finally
God,
hit it.
that little musical ascending tone that plays when you're going up the infinite staircase. It's cool how they pulled it off, but it's also kind of creepy. It just keeps
Mhm.
going and going. You mentioned Mips the Rabbit, named after the microprocessor without interlake pipeline stages, the architecture processor for the N64. He's just a hopping, running reference to Alice in Wonderland, and I think that's a pretty fitting reference for Mario in general, this game especially.
Mhm.
It's dreamlike to describe it. And I know that's a little passe to describe Mario 64 as dreamlike, but when you think about it, there is a reason why I think this game invokes such a weird, off-putting vibe to a lot of people, even before they get iceberg fan theory side of things. Miyamoto originally wanted 32 levels in the game, but due to time restraints, they had to cut that down to just 15, plus a few like bonus stages. And level design in general was really rushed because the developers had spent most of their time on perfecting movement as well as the camera in this game. And I mean,
There was one guy who was working on this camera.
I'll give them credit. It was early 3D. There wasn't a whole lot of templates available for how cameras in 3D games should work, but that is one of the aspects that has not aged well of this game is the camera controls. It's really not that great. Even at the time, yeah, when it first came out, what can you do? But I just feel games that came out not long after Mario 64, they improved on camera controls significantly.
Yeah, well, personally, I think he did a great job for what he had. I will say though, I don't like how they decided to do the camera determines where Mario moves, even though they kind of saw it as wherever you're going, if you're gonna go straight, you're going to like turn your camera and face that way, and then Mario will go straight. I didn't really like that just because I could be running on an edge, but then the camera angle will kind of shift. So then I have to move my analog stick a little bit in order to
Yeah.
adjust. And sometimes I would just fall off just because I didn't know how the camera would move.
Not to mention, there were so many times when I was replaying this game where I'm just like, why won't the camera go in this direction? I want to look at what's over there, but I can't. And it would also get stuck on certain obstacles and you couldn't see over them. And yeah, the camera controls are not the best. They do not hold up all that well. Also, you got it. All right. Yes, this game was very innovative and pushed gaming forward significantly. But in terms of how it holds up as far as movement, even though we spent so much time praising the development cycle of the movement, later Mario games would also refine and improve on this. I do not think the movement of Mario is all that solid for a platformer. It takes a while for him to pick up running speed. There are so many instances where you'll just get caught on something or you'll slide down a hill and just keep falling because you can't readjust Mario's movement if he's sliding down an incline.
Uh,
The
well,
jumping takes a lot of precision and practice to really hone in.
and I will say, speaking of getting stuck on something, whenever you got stuck on a damn fence and like
Yeah.
the game would spaz out, oh god, I needed to say that. I'm sorry, but like I'm just telling you for those of you who have not played 64, just watch out for that. But it's
Yeah.
still a great game. Still go play it.
Bottom line is the movement would very much be improved in later platformer games. It's
Hmm.
very imprecise, and there were so many instances where I had to come to a complete halt because I did not want to risk moving Mario around at certain corners or on platforms because I knew for a fact he wasn't going to make the jump or he would, for some reason, do a wide turn and fall off the
Oh,
edge of the cliff or something.
and then like every time I would do like a long jump to kind of skip a portion, and I'd even hold back to like stop my movement, but he'd just slide right off the cliff
But hey, at least Mario has a really funny face on the title screen.
that you can play with actually.
Yeah, it was basically a tech demo for the N64's graphic processor, I believe, where you can just pull Mario's face apart and give him horrible pain. You can spin his head around, pull on his mustache, distort him in horrific Lovecraftian eldritch abominations. You know, it's a me, Mario.
What were you doing? I was just making big smiley faces.
I wanted Mario to know what it's like to suffer.
To live under the moon.
All right.
Oh,
So the game's story, I guess you could call it, is Princess Peach, or Toadstool, as she's known in the letter, just sending a very succinct and abrupt letter to Mario. Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked you a cake.
mm.
That's all it says. No,
Yeah,
how do you do? What's going on?
just get here now.
I think bake you a cake is Mushroom Kingdom slang for babe, my parents aren't home.
Or maybe they just wanted a cake. But here's the thing, though. Where the heck is that kitchen? In this entire thing, there is no kitchen. And you do see the cake at the end.
Another thing Miyamoto was great at envisioning is he knew that this was going to be a lot of gamers' first exposure to 3D platforming. So the courtyard itself is kind of it basically boils down to a tutorial for the tutorial because it's a little bit of a sandbox area that encourages players to
Hmm.
just run around, jump, climb up trees, swim in some
Swim.
water.
Yeah. Dude, okay. I don't really care too much for the swimming mechanics. Like, I did like a little bit when I got used to them. But boy, was it a chore to even learn about them.
The beginning cutscene also establishes that the camera is an actual character. It's Lakitu following Mario around with a camera on a fishing pole.
Yeah. So I did like the aspect of him riding a cloud, though.
Mario is burning to death or suffocating in gas, and Lakitu's like, oh yeah, this'll make great footage.
Okay, but who's filming who's filming him, like, when we're running up? Because he just appears.
Who
Yeah,
watches the cameraman?
really, that'd be the all-powerful being and everything, the cameraman of the cameraman.
The mirror room in the upstairs level of Peach's castle, I do like how you can see him following Mario around in the reflection. That's nice.
Yeah, I actually really like that, and I especially loved it how one of the paintings was hidden on our side, and on the mirror side, though, which, by the way, was my favorite. Actually, no, that wasn't my favorite. It was the snow mountaintop or something like that, like the very first one with the penguins.
Cool,
I
cool
really love
mountain.
those Yeah, Cool Mountain. I love those penguins, man. They were my favorite.
Yeah,
uh,
I don't know why the baby penguin sounds like a car alarm when it's waddling around, but the crying noise, like, okay, you're very cute, baby penguin, but I swear, if you keep crying, I'm gonna yeet you off this cliff.
Well, actually, there's a speedrunning strat for that.
Yeah.
Oh, I also love the ice slide, even though it was annoying with the big penguin, just keeps on trying to push me off every now and again. That sucked.
I don't know what it is about the interior of the cabins you find on Cool Cool Mountain, but they just give off this cozy little mountain winter aesthetic. I know it's not much given that they're completely empty, but I like them. They're just yeah, it's just a nice little structure that Mario can interact with.
It's all that natural light.
So, as we mentioned, you can travel across 15 different worlds. Now, I've always wondered, are these worlds you travel through, are they actually different worlds and the paintings are just portals to them, or are they literally within the paintings?
Here's my own personal theory. I think the paintings are sort of trophies that Peach has for her ever conquest to conquer the world. And Bowser is actually like the good guy.
These are the 9 realms of the Mushroom Kingdom.
These worlds were definitely torn apart because, like, for example, the Womps,
Yeah.
the walls that just fell down, they literally built everything in the Mushroom Kingdom, and what did they get? Nothing. Not a penny.
They were
What
indentured servants.
Yeah, well, it's just like, this is not what I think.
And
Like,
then after you defeat the King Womp, they build a tower on his corpse.
oh, and not to mention, even the Big Babam, once you take out Big Babam, there's now 3 balls that are sort of like circling in the beginning of the mountaintop. Literally, his corpse is just rolling around in front of us.
Well, to be fair, and King Babam, he allied himself with Bowser, the leader of a foreign invasion, so King Babam had what was coming to him. He became an enemy of the state at that point.
But what if Bowser's trying to stand up for the mistreatment of everyone else?
Bob-omb Battlefield is such a great tutorial level. We talk
Mhm.
about the level design so much, and you can tell a lot of care went into this one. It's the first world that you enter, and it establishes so much gameplay mechanics right off the bat.
Mhm.
You can hang off the bridge. There's red coins in plain sight that you instinctively run to. As we mentioned earlier, the chain chomp, there's nothing indicating you can get a power star for it. But once
Mhm.
you figure it out, it makes you think, what else can I do to earn a power star?
Exactly.
It has the first boss fight of King Babam, who slowly walks towards you and you just throw him around.
Mario is just able to pick up this mad behemoth of a bomb and just chuck it.
Don't throw him off the mountain, he'll just say that's cheating.
Like, it's a fight, bro.
Monarchs in their divine right to rule, blah blah blah. It introduces you to a couple of the game's recurring enemies, little Babams that follow you around and explode, Goombas who, I don't know, I feel like Goombas don't really look right in this game. They're just like weird little dome looking things. Like, I know that's what a Goomba is supposed to look like, but the Goomba design in this game I don't think translated too well. Although, speaking of designs that didn't translate well, can we talk about Bowser in this game, how he looks?
Yeah, Bowser kind of looks, I don't know, diagonal, long faced.
He looks like
Like,
a parade float.
yeah, yeah. And like the body's fine. It's just that face though. Face
Yeah.
looks like got smushed under something.
He looks like the plushy version of himself that the Koopa souvenir gift shop would sell.
Exactly.
Mario 64 Bowser will never have drip.
Sadly not. He'll never be a Giga Chad.
He'll be Giga Bowser at least. What was your favorite world in the game? I think mine would have to be Big Boo's Haunt. I am just a sucker for
Mhm.
haunted house levels.
Yeah, I will say your choice of Big Boo's Haunt is valid because it's one of those levels that I really enjoyed, especially having to take out the ghost every time I wanted to go back in. It was interesting.
Yeah, it's so spooky and creepy, especially the
Mhm.
music. The track that plays for Big Boo's Haunt is very jarring when you just listen to it in a vacuum. It's just this low, dim humming sound over and over again. But yeah, like I said, I am a sucker for haunted house levels in video games, especially from this era. I know Banjo Kazooie has a haunted house level that I really appreciate, the Frogger PS1 game as well. There's just something about this era of video games that they just nailed that spooky but silly, fun Halloween vibe. I will say this though about Big Boo's Haunt, that fucking piano.
Oh yeah, I don't even mess with that piano. It's too busy trying to chomp me. I can't get over it.
I vividly remember playing this with my high school buddies for the first time, and I jumped out of my seat when that first happened. I was not expecting that piano to start biting me.
He's about to play Beethoven on you.
Oh, and all the books flying off the bookshelves and the chairs levitating and being thrown at you, and the creepy little merry-go-round in the basement. Big Boo's Haunt is definitely my favorite.
It's definitely one of the more interactive courses, which I personally liked the Snow Mountain.
Cool Mountain.
Ugh, dadgummit. Cool Mountain. So Cool Mountain, I would say is my favorite just because the slides. I enjoyed the slide mechanic and I enjoyed going down those slides and finding new routes to go
Racing the
through.
penguins.
Racing the penguin was a big one. Also finding the secrets in the slides and how I can sort of cheat a little bit without necessarily cheating in the race. Jolly Roger Bay was all right. But what was really interesting is that when you first get into Jolly Roger Bay, you have this fog that's over everything.
Yeah, I noticed that. It wasn't there when I went back to it.
Yeah, and it doesn't ever load back, even if you were to load, like, save, like, for example, if you were to save the point where you first got into the game, save at that point, and then continue on with your first save file. If you were to go back to that second save file, still wouldn't be there because you would have to restart an entire game.
That's not the only weird thing going on in this level because that eel as well. Alongside
Mhm.
the piano, I definitely understand why the eel was responsible for so many young players' nightmares. That thing, you're just swimming around, free as a fish, and then you look down and you see this nightmare anglerfish looking monstrosity of the depths right below you, just swimming around, waiting for prey to enter its line of sight.
It's very scary to kind of swim through. It reminded me of a lot of actually in Black Ops 2, there's a part where you have to swim through sharks that are circling around. I think being in that vulnerable position in water, and not to mention how slow you are in water, or at least how I feel you're so much slower compared to the seal, creepy and scary.
The swimming mechanics aren't the greatest. Mario definitely moves a little sluggishly, and you better hope that there's some bubbles or coins down there to replenish your air, because if you're down there way too deep and you're running out of oxygen, the death animation for Mario when he drowns is so unsettlingly realistic for a Mario
Yeah.
game. He just goes limp and floats to the surface after ragdolling underwater. It's like, yeah, that would scare kids from going swimming in the local pool.
Kind of adds a little bit of eeriness every time I see him drown.
Moving
Yeah.
on to Shifting Sandland, what'd you think of this
Yeah,
one?
I loved it. I personally loved it. What are those blocks that sort of like make you jump around when you grab them?
I don't know what they're called, but yeah, you pick up this box and it just jumps around and you're hanging on for dear life.
It's fun. I especially enjoyed that portion, but I will say it was kind of annoying at first to get used to, especially with the quicksand, quote unquote quicksand that was around in the sinking sand
Yeah,
stuff.
that it does limit your mobility in this level that there's so much quicksand pit, so there's really only one or two specific routes you can take, otherwise you're just gonna sink in the sand. Unless you fire yourself out of the cannon at the vulture and get a power star for your trouble.
Yeah, screw that bird.
Yes, Mario, as any good Christian knows, the sky is God's domain, so therefore the vulture must be struck down.
Just punch it.
There's a secret boss in the pyramid.
Really? I didn't know that.
So the boss's name is called Rock, and it's just two big stone hands with eyeballs. Very Zelda-like now that I'm looking at them. And he appears after you open the top of the pyramid and ride the elevator.
Oh, wow. I can't believe this is the first time I'm hearing about it. It just goes to show how much this game has to offer.
There's a lot of really creepy enemies. Like, this is a whole thing that ties into why I think this game just gives off a creepy vibe. You look at some of the enemies you encounter, and maybe it was just due to the graphical limitations of the time, so Nintendo was trying to go for like a goofy or kind of silly look to a lot of them, and they just couldn't pull it off. We mentioned the eel and the piano, which are deliberately meant to be creepy, I feel, but even stuff like the womps or the pokies in the shifting sandlands, there's just something unnerving about their faces.
Just them kind of smiling at you or even grimacing at you in a way.
Yeah, the
Like they
Grindles
just
too. I do not like the
they
Grindles.
never blink.
The Goombas may just look ridiculous, but some of the other enemies, I don't know. Not just the enemies, but the painting to Lethal Lava Land. It's this creepy face in a fire, like it's a flame face, menacingly grinning at you as you jump into the painting. Yeah, that's a little nightmare inducing for young children.
One thing that was really kind of creepy to me is the signs. Like the signs that are all over the place. Like be quiet when walking down this hallway, or the Loch Ness Monster one with hit the nice dinosaur, and it'll lower its head. Don't become its lunch.
But Dory, she's so adorable. She's just swimming around in an underground lake, minding her own business. And then Mario comes in and stomps on her back and forces her to be his water steed.
Nothing says Mario like animal abuse.
If we're talking about fun little animals you meet along the way, the monkey on Tall Tall Mountain that steals Mario's hat.
Gotta go take that hat back.
What a little scamp. He's so cute. The first time I was going into Tiny Huge Island, where you're running down the hall and you realize the hallway is way bigger and the painting is gigantic compared to what you expected it to be, I thought that was a really neat camera trick that the developers pulled off. There's also the other painting to get into Tiny Huge Island, which is the opposite, where the painting and hallway is smaller than you thought it would be. Just a really fun, silly thing. Tiny Huge Island in general, I thought was a really cool way for the developers to mess around a bit with scale and size, because there's two versions. There's the one where Mario is small and everything is big, and then there's the version where Mario is big and everything is tiny.
I especially loved kind of like discovering that world more. I want to say that was the most interactive world.
It definitely had a lot more replayability of just messing around with size and all that. I do know that you messaged me while you were playing the game that Snowman's Land, you did not have a fun time with Snowman's
Oh,
Land.
I hate that breath. So when you got to near the top of the snowman's like, what is that? Is that an ant on my shoulder?
An
I want to
ice
start
ant?
blowing. I want to start blowing. And then he started blowing this snow breath that will whisk you away if you don't hide behind this penguin. But this penguin wouldn't move right, because every single time it wouldn't just walk nicely to and fro. It would be like, oh, let's walk forward. Okay, we're doing fine. Oh, we're gonna rush a little.
I don't feel like it. I'm just gonna sit here.
Mhm.
Damn those penguins. They're so cute, but they're such dicks.
Yeah, the dude was trying to out juke me, and he out juked me a lot, and I had to keep getting up there and have to. Okay, there's this part where you have these snow slopes in order to get up to the
Yeah, I
snowman.
was gonna mention this. This part, I was so frustrated with this, but also I had a grin on my face because I got to the end jumping over the snow slopes as they're rushing towards you, and I got caught, and Mario was just slipping and sliding between the sides of the slopes, and he just kept getting caught on them, and I'm like, this is annoying, but I am having a fun, silly time just sliding all over the snow.
I really loved the Koopa shell that was there too.
You can just ride it around.
Yeah, it was so fun.
I
I
think there was
really
also one on Tiny Huge Island too.
But this one you stole from its owner. So, you know how their shells are their homes? Well, guess what, buddy? I'm about to steal your home, and I'm gonna treat it like a surfboard. Do, do, do.
Mario is kind of the asshole when you think about it. They're just minding their own business, and here comes this guy. He just breaks into their home, steals their money, grabs their power star, and stomps on their friends' heads.
Yahoo!
But it's okay because he's endorsed by the divine ruler, so respect your monarchy. We mentioned Lethal Lava Land earlier, but this was probably one of the most annoying worlds to travel through just because there is little room for error. If you fall into that lava at any point, you are donezo.
That volcano lift. So, in order to get one of the power stars in here, you get on the volcano lift, which then takes you up. But there's this one particular part where I had to figure out the precise timing because every time, if you mess this up, you were more than likely just going to die right then.
Although it is satisfying punching the bullies into the lava.
I do agree with that. Did you know if you jumped like just before they like were about to hit you and like would hit the front of their face, they go back farther?
I didn't know that trick, no.
Yeah, I kind of did that and it helped me, especially against the big one. But the smaller ones, when there's like more than two of them, it gets kind of hard to manage.
Hazy Maze Cave, it's one of the levels I can live without. Like, I kind of
Mhm.
like it visually. I like how it's this grassy labyrinth kind of looking thing, and it is where Dory is, so that gives it a point in its favor. But I don't know, it's just a little on the confusing layout wise. Like, there's a lot of twists and turns, and I know it's called a maze, so of course, but of all the worlds you travel through, it's one of the less pleasant ones in my experience, but I do vibe with its aesthetic.
Yeah, I mean, also agree. Dory is the best part of the game, personally.
It is where you pick up the metal cap and become Metal Mario.
The new Iron Man in the Marvel Studios.
I mean,
Oh my gosh.
he's Silver Surfer. He is Silver Plumber.
Okay, what if the Silver Surfer gets made a joke about being like Metal Mario? Good thing about Metal Mario, let's talk about this power up. This power up, it does give Mario a whole new makeover, and now he can sink to the bottom of Jet
Everything's chrome
Springs.
in the future.
Yeah, Cyberpunk
He
2077.
will arrive at the gates of Valhalla shiny in chrome.
Uh,
It's a
yep.
useful power up because it lets you travel and walk underwater so you can get stuff you couldn't normally do while swimming. But the course you have to get it through, you better time it out properly because if the power up runs out where you're underwater, you will be forced out by the current, swept out into the castle's moat, and you will have to go all the way back around. So it's a little tedious.
Well, that doesn't sound like fun.
How did you feel about Tick Tock Clock?
I will say I did it when the timer was at 12 when it was stopped. So I will say it was kind of eerie and weird to see that. But I know if everything was moving, I would be overstimulated and not know what to do. And I would definitely rage at that level.
And then finally, there was Rainbow Ride. This was an
Hmm.
interesting world.
It's basically roller coaster simulator, but you jump over a couple obstacles.
Yeah, you're just on this magic carpet floating through the sky. Like Lethal Lava Land, it's a level that's a fun concept, but there is very little room for error, so after a while it does get a little frustrating when the movement of Mario 64 hasn't aged all that well. So, returning to this world, I was dreading it because even on the Switch version, I did not have a great time on Rainbow Ride. It was probably one of my least favorite worlds after Wet Dry Land. But to be honest,
Mm.
I actually enjoyed it a bit better this time. I don't know. I,
Really?
I just had more fun with it. Maybe it's because I was playing more casually for this replay. So Rainbow Ride, my opinion of you, it's gone up. I understand you better now.
Well, I guess I can't understand it because I've only played through it once, like just to get the 1 star, and then that was it. I didn't want to go back.
And that brings you to the final boss against Bowser. You had to fight Bowser two other times and throughout the game. The first time is really easy. You just run behind him, pick up his tail, and throw him into a bomb. Gotta say, he is very relaxed and chill about that first boss fight. He is barely even trying.
And even with the second one, it was still pretty easy to me, just because you only needed to bomb him once. So there's these bombs that are on the end that you have to throw Bowser into, and just once. That's it. But his third, oh my gosh, what the heck was going on here?
He's
I
actually
didn't.
trying now.
Yeah, this boy is throwing fire everywhere. I'm getting burned. These
He's
things are heat-seeking
he,
fire missiles.
he's shattering the arena piece by
That
piece.
boy is thick.
I guess at that point he had had enough of getting dizzy and thrown around. I will say, when you grab Bowser by the tail, the first time you spin him around is so slow. Mario is barely spinning him. I understand it's to build momentum and all that, but I'm like, Bowser, you're not even trying to break free. You're just letting him do this to you.
He's just like, all right, he's got my tail. I'm gonna do the Dragon Ball Z. He got my tail. I can't move.
Bowser's not actually into Peach. This was all just a decoy so he could really play out his kinks with Mario.
He could get manhandled by Mario.
Yeah, so you defeat Bowser, the Mushroom Kingdom is saved, Princess Peach is freed, and she does bake a cake for you. And the credits roll. You get this nice little photo that definitely feels like it was something a camera in the 90s would have taken of like a dimly lit birthday party or something.
Why is
And
it dark in the background?
why is there a creepy Yoshi face in the background?
Yeah, like, okay, Yoshi is in this game. It's when you collect all 120 stars.
Yeah, he's on top of the castle.
Yeah, and I will say, like, seeing his face in the back right there was very eerie. I kind of get chills seeing that because even the dolls that are on top of the cake are kind of weird.
Yeah, well, that's the gameplay side of Mario 64. So I gotta ask Garrett, since this was your first time playing it, what were your overall thoughts on it?
Okay, when it started out, I enjoyed it, and then it started getting into the tedious movements and camera work, and then I started hating it a little bit. So I have one, much more respect for speedrunners going through this and making it look so easy. Two, the game is a masterpiece for being a frontier game in this switch to D-pad to analog stick, and as well as introducing a more 3DS world. Even though it's not like the first 3D game, it still sort of helped push it forward with how many copies it sold. And I want to say, even though at first, Chase, when you were starting to tell me like, oh man, it's a super creepy game and all this, and I'm just playing through it, and I'm like, what do you mean this is a super creepy game? It just looks like a Mario game. And then the more I like listen to either the icebergs or playing through the game myself, I could see why it was deemed as a really creepy pasta game.
Peach's Castle in general, it gives off the exact same vibe of liminal space. Like, you ever see those liminal space videos and images floating around online? I think it's because that first area, especially, the way the walls are painted to look like clouds and everything, it just gives off the same vibe of like the kind of place you would have been in as a young child. The place that you only very hazily, vaguely recall the image and emotions it invoked, but nothing else concrete. So, yeah, Peach's Castle is this space between spaces. As for me, Mario 64, this is a landmark, iconic title for a reason, not just because it was one of the very first 3D games a lot of kids played at the time. It innovated so many concepts that video games going forward would build upon and nowadays we take for granted. So much of its level design, while a little haphazard in terms of consistency and thematic connections, there's a lot of instinctual mechanics that the player will pick up on. Like we discussed with the Bob-omb Battlefield, the red coins, you, the player, are naturally drawn to those, and it teaches you a lot of stuff going forward in the game. When you're running around looking for power stars, and even on the menu, the power stars give you a little hint based on their name of where you can find them or what you have to do. Some are a little more cryptic than others, but it points you in the right direction at least.
Also, while you're exploring, definitely do take in the sights because that could lead you to your next star should it give you that hint.
Mario 64 to me will just be one of those games that, well, it's not going to be making my top 10 because I do think it has aged. I don't think the mechanics of movement are that great. They are a product of their time. That camera is so annoying to work with, but it's just one of those games that I do think everyone who is into retro gaming has to play. It's just too influential. It's like watching The Godfather, in a film class or something like that. It's one of those movies that it more or less changed how a lot of filmmakers viewed their artistic craft going forward. And I think Mario 64 is very similar. The jump to 3D graphics in video games is often compared to the jump to color in that it changed how movies were made going forward. And Mario 64, this was a major step for the industry and gaming as a medium. Not to mention, it became the foundation for the Mario series going forward as well. Practically every Mario game after this takes cues from Mario 64, just as Mario 64 itself was conceived to be a successor to the main 2D platformer games on the previous consoles like Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. So too did Mario 64 introduce the next stage in the Nintendo Mario tentpole games of platformers. You had Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy, Galaxy 2, and now Mario Odyssey. Those games all refine and improve on the formula that was set in stone with Mario 64. Yeah, that's just how I feel about this game. It is a major, iconic landmark title for a very damn good reason, and I highly encourage everyone to go play it.
So, if y'all aren't familiar with some conspiracy theories and the like, Super Mario 64 has a lot of them.
Normally, we wouldn't really discuss this kind of stuff with games because fan interpretations and all that, that's not really here nor there. We tend to just stick to the canonical material. But with Mario 64, as we've alluded to, there is something going on with the fandom of this game. There is a lot to unpack with Mario 64 in terms of how people feel about it.
I mean, sometimes people are just like, it's just a game. What are you guys talking about? And others are like, it's all personalized. We have our own universe of Mario. That's why it feels so different when we play each other's games.
Some stuff is more credible than others, and other stuff is actually true. It's just how you interpret it. I think the most well-known urban legend slash thing that turned out to be real about this game is the whole L is real 2401 thing.
That was either okay, it was either a nod to the Legend of Zelda game that was being made as well, or it was for the unused model of Luigi, which wasn't found until I think 22 years after release, something like that.
In 2020. So L is real. If you swim around in the back courtyard of the castle next to where Boo's haunted house level is, there's a statue in a fountain. There's a plaque on it that you can kinda sorta make out. Like, if anything, it's paraphernalia. You can't really tell what it says one way or the other. But for the longest time, the common assumption was that the plaque read L is real 2401, which most people interpreted as Luigi is real. In the development, Mario 64 was originally going to be a two-player game where the second player would control Luigi, but he was ultimately cut. That was until 24 years and 1 month later after the game came out, there was a leak of the game's source code confirming, once and for all, Luigi was real.
The textures were sort of all discombobulated, and so somebody had to sort of straighten them out, but I don't think there was any programming in there to really move him around. But it was nice to see what could have been Luigi, could have been that co-op gameplay that Miyamoto was trying to implement.
Well, at least in the DS version, Luigi was playable alongside Yoshi and Wario.
Yoshi.
There's also the whole skybox of Wet Dry World, which is an edited photograph of a real town in Spain.
Yeah.
When I found that out, I'm just like, that's odd. I guess development time, it was more efficient to go with that. But yeah, just one of those weird things where once it's pointed out to you, you just look at it differently. It puts it into a whole different light.
It's not I kind of found it kind of creepy to just see a town over the horizon. The sky also looked like it was underwater. So, how is it dry?
It's just an uncomfortable map. It's so claustrophobic. You're just playing in this big box full of water and weird bugs.
What else was there? Oh, back to Yoshi. When you like got 120 stars, you would meet him on top of Princess Peach's castle, like we said before. But then he just hop off.
I'm a head out.
Yeah, he just hops off, and many people like speculated that he did some unaliving events. That's just people theories.
Yeah, that's just fans always interpreting it in the darkest way possible. It's right up there with the whole, this was all Mario's imagination. He's just tripping on shrooms in the courtyard.
Yeah. Let's see here. Well, we already talked about Princess Peach probably being a tyrannical leader.
Her people are completely codependent on her for every aspect. Like, they have no real defense against a foreign enemy infiltrating their inner capital via submarine, of all things, and they have to rely on this plumber boy to just waltz in and take care of everything for them.
Hey, plumber boy, I hear you're establishing rule in this tyrannical kingdom. I'm about to stop that all right now. Kidnapping the princess.
As always, it's the blue collars that keep nations running. What would we do without them?
Salute to everyone in the workforce.
Well, to be fair to the Toads, they do give Mario some useful advice, and I think one gives you a power star, like, here, take this, Mario, it'll help you, so they're not all
Really?
bad. Yeah, the toad that's
Dude.
by the staircase.
3 stars. I had 3 stars left, and you know how long it took me to get those 3 stars? It took me a long time because they were kind of like some of the hardest stars to get.
Should've just talked to the toad, man.
I should just talk to the damn toads. Like I just ignored them after the second one. Isn't there one where like toads were like in the walls?
Yeah, that might be another translation thing where it's meant to be the toads are trapped in the castle, but the way it's worded is the toads are trapped in the walls. It wouldn't be
Mhm.
without precedent. In the Super Mario Bros. 1, the original game, I think, Bowser turns toads into blocks, so he just has that power.
He's a magic man.
He can also replace Peach's paintings with his own face, which, again, another uncanny thing. Am I the only one that felt like that one fake painting you run into early in the game where it looks like Peach's painting, but once you get close to it, it turns out to be Bowser? I thought
Hmm.
that Bowser was a little sinister looking in that painting. I don't know if that's just me, but
No, it wasn't just you. I will say, like that to me, if I was younger, I would be scared of Bowser for sure.
honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that this is probably Bowser's goofiest appearance, this would be his peak of intimidation because not only does he have the whole creepy painting vibe going on, but that laugh of his that taunts you whenever you die or get stuck somewhere, like, oh, 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 oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bowser is built up to be a lot more threatening in this game, and then you meet him and he's just this Barney the dinosaur looking thing.
Also, does he kind of change colors? It seems like he's kind of more purplish in the beginning and then he turns greener.
I didn't really notice that, but possibly.
It's the personalized.
Man, now that I'm thinking about it, Mario is kind of an asshole. Like, King Womp, he is sticking up for his people. He is leading a revolt. The Womps have been stepped on for far too long and exploited as a workforce. And then Mario's like, go back to work, you lazy wall.
Just jump on their back, destroy them, kill them because they're out of line.
Yeah, why?
They don't even have that great of healthcare. Why do they all have these broken backs, but they only get slapped on with a band-aid?
Why is everything in this game just so weird? Like, no other Mario game is like this. It's just this game.
And so that's what inspired the Dark Souls, the Soulsborne series.
Peach's Castle is a really cool hub world, though.
Oh, also there's like a sort of like a box or something like that. Like there's like a black box or something in the back right tower of Peach's Castle where people have speculated that Waluigi just hangs out in. It gets out there. I just think a lot of people love to world build their own way.
Yeah, this game is like open enough for interpretation and allows you to fill your imagination in. Whether that be pleasant fun, like, oh, I wonder what all these wacky characters are up to in this world, or as we've explained, the sinister side of things, like what nightmares await in Mario 64.
Do you think the ghosts are the souls of toads?
I think as later Mario games establish, I think the boos are just a separate species from everything. I don't think they're
Oh,
literal dead people, but I could be wrong. Maybe they're the ghosts of Goombas coming back for revenge.
Ghost of Goomba's past.
I've always liked boos. I think boos are one of my favorite Mario enemies. They're just cute little cuddly ghosts that are they're just shy, they're scared. You have to turn around for them to talk to you.
It sounds like introverts everywhere. Hey, what's
And
up,
they
my
got
guys?
that little giggle of a laugh, which, granted, when you're playing in Big Boo's Haunt, it comes across as more creepy than silly, but otherwise, they're just mischievous little ghosts. Watching Ghostbusters, I always felt like if ghosts had a taste to them, I always thought they would taste like marshmallows.
I think it's because getting the Michelin Man or whatever.
Right.
Like what
Yeah, exactly why. I think that's what made me think. Like, if ghosts were tangible and you could bite into them, they would taste kind of marshmallowy, but not quite. You know what
kind
I
of
mean?
marshmallow.
Makes me wonder, what would a Goomba taste like?
I think of those like milk duds.
Did you ever get the wing cap to work in this game? Giving you the.
Nope.
Yeah, I could only get it to work after being shot out of a cannon. I think that's the only way it works, but I could be wrong. Like, do you have to do a special jump in order to fly?
Your guess is as good as mine. I did not hit any of the caps. I did not learn
Ah.
about their powers. I just know there's the vanish cap, metal cap, and the wing cap. Can we talk about that last level with Bowser, like how it incorporates everything we should have
Yeah.
learned throughout our journey?
Yeah, I think that's what all great final bosses in games should strive to do. They are the take everything you've learned about the game and put it here on the final test. This is the final exam of the game.
Oh man, exam. It's my worst nightmare. I will say that level in particular, I really enjoyed out of the other Bowser levels, but actually, no, I think the second one. I really like the second one, like Bowser in the Lake of Fire. I really enjoyed that one.
Catching Mips, I completely forgot about the roll grab you can do when you're running, so I was just trying to
Really?
catch him the normal way. And it wasn't until I accidentally pressed the B button that I caught him, and I was like, oh yeah, that's how you're supposed to do it.
I actually didn't know I could get a star from him. I just wanted to catch him, and it just worked out.
The entrances to Hazy Maze Cave and Dire Docks I really liked. They're just
Yeah.
pools of dark sludge water that you dive into, and again, it's just part of that fever dream. Like, describing how to play Mario 64 to someone who's never heard of it or been exposed to any of its iconography or imagery, you're just describing a dream to somebody. Like, so I'm playing as this plumber boy walking through this liminal space playground looking castle full of mushroom people looking for a princess. I jump into this pool of metallic looking water, and then you have to jump through paintings, and then everything's tiny, and then there's a snowman that blows you around, and then you have to slide a race against a penguin,
And there's like this giant turtle with spikes on its back.
and at the top of the castle there's a dinosaur and he gives you more lives.
Doesn't he give you like 100 lives or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Oh, I just remembered another way that this game's memory lives on now that we're in the N64 nostalgia era. But in Mario Odyssey, Peach's castle in the endgame of that, the last world of Mario Odyssey is Mushroom Kingdom, and it is very much inspired by the Mario 64 depiction of it. And in fact, I think you can put on Mario 64's model as like a costume there, so that's fun.
I love when the newer games call back to their origins, especially with Mario being how extensive its history is. It's one of the longest running games, if not the longest. I don't know. Is it the longest?
Well, Mario first appeared as Jumpman in Donkey Kong, but wait, when did Pac-Man come out? Well, I did get that remake recently.
Either way,
I'm excited for the Mario movie coming out soon. That's going to be fun.
it'll be quite the film. I don't know. Hey,
yeah.
Chase, do you want to get together and like watch that movie together?
Yeah, that sounds like a fun time. Another example of how Mario 64's legacy lives on. A lot of stuff in that movie looks like it's taken from Mario 64. You got the Power Stars, the penguins.
Like, I can't wait to watch the movie, but I don't have high expectations for it. You know what I mean?
I kind of have high expectations for it. The trailers look promising. Yes, it's Illumination, and it is Chris Pratt, who so far I am not sold on the voice, but I think that this is going to turn out to be a pretty enjoyable movie.
I will say Jack Black's Bowser, though.
Oh yeah, Jack Black, he is nailing it in everything we've seen of the movie. All right, well, that's gonna about wrap it up. If anyone out there wants to get in contact with us, send us any feedback, or just praise our egos, or tell us that we're terrible people, it's okay, guys. You can insult Garrett. I won't judge
What?
you.
No.
You can email us at backwardscompatiblepod@gmail.com. Link in the description.
I've been your host, Garrett.
And I've been your other host, Chase. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast.
Bye-bye. I tried.